You better watch out, you better not die, you better not cry, and I'm telling you why. Yu-Gi-Oh! Bandless season is here. Hello and welcome back everyone to the community's favorite 4-time-per-year segment. We're going to be discussing this very reasonably well balanced and eloquently put discussion point the community loves to bring up, the ban list. Today we're talking specifically TCG, so let's dive into this in multiple different ways. Number one, beginning with some disclaimers, I suppose, about the ban list that sometimes people forget and have to be caveated when giving predictions or analysis of a potential upcoming Forbidden Limited list. Second thing is I would also like to talk about some of the community-driven hype or disdain about some of the cards that are still going around and that are common talking points currently. And section number 3, I'm going to give you my personal prediction of what I think is going to happen with this upcoming Forbidden Limited list. For your legal archives, please proceed with this video with caution and attention. Farfa divorces himself completely and totally from any and all financial commitments undertaken by the viewer. Anything successfully predicted is due to well-balanced calculations, and anything missed or falsely stated was done so jokingly. The consistent theory and accepted game state that the community seems to have with this Forbidden Limited list in general, all Forbidden Limited lists, is that it is a marketing tool. So while there is clearly a problem with Snake Eye right now, we also have to take in consideration none of these Snake Eye cards have been reprinted into the Megatins or future rarity collections and stuff. So generally, we assume high rarity reprints still to come, means that it's very unlikely we'll see direct hits on a ban list. Now, while this isn't always the case, and we have seen some examples of this in the past, generally based on the patterns of previous ban lists, this has usually been the case. Okay, so why are we yapping all of this information here? Because while banning Wanted or Princess definitely makes sense gameplay-wise, it doesn't seem like a great idea just before the WCQ season. And speaking of which, this is just hoping that we will be getting a Forbidden Limited list just before the WCQ season. Now, the second ban list of 2023 was in early June, and in 2002, the ban list was in May, and in 2021, it was in July. Although that last one, there was a bit of an incident in the world with regards to... Don't worry about that. Based off of this data alone from the last couple of years, it should probably be before the WCQs for NA and EU in late July next month. Surely they won't change their minds with how this pattern usually unfolds. So, what are some cards that have been being discussed in the community right now? Let's begin with Apollosa. Apollosa is one of the most powerful cards ever printed. It is the combo player's dream, and decks which have easy link climbing capabilities, especially before their big play commitment, live and die by summoning Apollosa first. But the problem is that so do many other decks. Apollosa is an auto-win against, for example, Flunderies, and against tier limits, it's also extremely powerful unless you're able to string together multiple chain links of powerful monster effects to out this really difficult card, because it can usually also absorb a battle phase. But the question is, does it need to go just yet? Well, they did hit the big hitters of Baron and Savage. I'm of the opinion, design and gameplay-wise, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse all need to go. The 4 horsemen being Baron, Savage, Apollosa, and most controversial of which, Masquerena, but don't take that as a prediction. I know that's never gonna happen, probably. Apollosa sort of brings up this other discussion of, do we need to also ban Nibiru? Because now combo decks become significantly more stronger now, or do you just let combo decks lose to Nibiru? I mean, what other possible Omni-Negate can you create in that sense? I think they've done 2 very big hits already, design-wise, in Baron and Savage. I think going further than that with Apollosa so soon, I personally don't see it happening, but I also think it is very possible to see an Apollosa ban, especially now that Rarity Collection 2 has probably sold out or something at this stage, right, with the reprint. Another card to talk about is Dimensional Barrier. One of the most annoying type of floodgates, not just a floodgate that you can MST like there can be only one or goes in match. It is a floodgate that lingers. A lingering card effect, meaning that it stays for the entire turn so long as it resolves. There is no way to just somehow cancel the effect of Dimensional Barrier in a couple of plays. One of the most egregious forms of disruption in Yu-Gi-Oh! I think it should be banned, but I don't see it happening. Mentioned it already, but Goes in Match, Rivalry of Warlords, There Can Be Only One, Anti-Spells Fragrance, these are all very similar cards in what they are trying to achieve. Flip them immediately post-siding to stun your opponent, but for whatever reason, I think that they just like them being at 1. I guess maybe just to give people a chance in some games to just win and auto-win. Apparently, that's just card games and how they should be, according to Konami, it feels like. Not a fan, but yeah, for prediction-wise, I don't see any of those kind of cards getting banned either. Dimension Shifter is extremely popular, and for some of the reasons mentioned in the previous continuous trap cards, I also see this one not being hit at all. Maybe potentially a semi-limit in the same way that Macedo had this, but I think in a best-of-3 format, they might seem to be unwilling to do this. It's a bit more egregious in best-of-1 because you only have one game to win, whereas in best-of-3, that variance can be minimized to some extent. Beatrice is a really big one that people have been discussing recently in the lead-up to Fiendsmith, which is a new deck, or new archetype, or engine, kind of, really, in the upcoming new set, and it's very likely that Beatrice will be seeing a lot of play in the upcoming format in various different forms and multiple different archetypes. Are they going to hit Beatrice in preparation for, like, everyone splashing this in lots of different decks? Well, I don't think so, because the deck kind of needs Beatrice to facilitate a lot of the cool plays it can do. I mean, there's also Wave King Caesar you can go into, which, you know, is kind of annoying. Very annoying, actually. And I don't see them basically getting rid of the main promotional part of their new product by hitting the cards that it makes good. I mean, those cards, I think, will definitely get hit in a year, but not yet. All right, let's talk about the first set of changes here. We're going to call these dust cards. Cards that just sit on the ban list for years, gathering dust, that can essentially come back at any moment. There are just so many here, so I don't think it's worth me bringing them up in every single video going forward. But to give you some examples, there's the dangers. Yugi-tubers usually predict this on every single ban list, and yeah, very likely we'll see things like Jackalope and Tsuchinoko eventually come back sometime, when it really is just, you know, in the same vein as Orcust Harp Horror, which I would have argued at some point did become a dust card, where it was fine to come back and it just sat there gathering dust, waiting for it to eventually get unlocked. Some other dust cards include Zodiac, which I think is in the same boat. We've seen in Mastedo that it really just doesn't do anything. Especially in best of one format, you would think Zodiac would be more powerful in Mastedo because, you know, go second, drop a bunch of hand traps or board breakers, Zeus your opponent, bang, that's it, game over. And in a best of 3 in TCG, this absolutely is easier to deal with. So yeah, more dust cards are the Zodiac cards. Probably not Rap here just yet, and Broad Bull, but Dryden and Barrage 100% can come back. Same with things like Lunalight cards. Time Seal is also another very, very good example of a dust card that's just waiting to come back eventually. Now, let me bring in some of my predictions here. I'm going to be talking to you about, first, some unlimits. In sequence of the previous list, I can see Armageddon Knight going from 2 to 3. I think it's clearly past its prime, so unless we see a new deck that specifically has a crazy powerful starter card from the graveyard, in the same way that Orcust Harp Horror was, which I don't even know if you play Armageddon Knight in Orcust anymore, because you have the Horus engine now to complement your discarding and drawing, and your normal summon is most likely just better fit for Girsu. So yeah, Armageddon Knight can easily go to 3. Semi-limited, I think I'm going to put down Pot of Prosperity. It is quite a meh hit, but Prosperity is a legitimately absurd card. The card is duality with very minimal restrictions, and you can guarantee that as soon as we no longer need to just play 20 hand traps plus in our decks to stop Snake Eye, this card will be an auto staple in almost anything that can run it. And I think limited would be good, but since we're predicting, I just have a hunch that 2 will be the number, in the same way they like to do consistency hits in Mastedo. Alright, now limited to 1, we also have Skill Drain. You know, perhaps it's just life, perhaps it's just being old as hell, but I thought this card was unlimited only like a couple of formats ago. So I'm always like, why would they unlimit Drain just to hit it again? Well, they actually brought Drain back to 3 in February 2022. That was 7 years ago. So I think it's about time this ridiculous card that has been essentially replacing Summon Limit for the last couple of months finally hits the bucket. Next limitation, it should go without any surprise for loyal Farfa viewers. Give me a big hug. I love you guys. We need to limit Fenrir. Now, my very mediocre 3 disruption board will not all be immediately blown on 1 Fenrir to deal with the search, the attack, and the banish after I use a monster effect in order to stop the first search. We will no longer misplay together, community. Banned, and I think we're out for blood. Kind of, but not really. Like we said, there's more problematic cards going on right now, but I just don't see such huge major hits to Snake Eye happening just before the WCQs. But the biggest one, I think, should be Sinful Spoils. I think finally cutting off the engine between Snake Eye and every other deck, like Snake Eye, like Fire King, I think should hopefully be done now rather than later. I guess that would really beg the question, what are you going to play Diabellstar in going forward? Well, listen, Diabellstar is a popular card for artwork and lore reasons, so I'm sure people will find a reason to pick up the reprints of Diabellstar eventually, but I think it is probably time for them to do this, unless we keep Sinful Spoils around for basically it would have to be almost like over half a year for this point forward, slowly bringing them down to semi-limited or then limited to hit the consistency of Snake Eye, and then eventually Snake Eye dies. Which means that we would have had almost a year of Snake Eye by the time they do get round to doing all of this. And I really think people are fatigued from Snake Eye at this point already. So I'm hoping that they just cut off that deck sooner rather than later, and I think Sinful Spoils is the best thing to do, and I definitely see the TCG as the place to do this compared to the OCG and compared to Masado, where these things usually slowly get hit consistency-wise, then eventually they'll hit a big power card. Next up, I'm predicting Sanctifier Dragon. There's plenty of reasons why hitting the puppet isn't the correct way to actually address this. Branded is kind of a cool deck. The reality is you don't really even need Sanctifier, even if you are playing pure branded without floodgating your opponent. Sanctifier doesn't even really come up. It's only ever an ignorant, weird, degenerate card that just does unfair and unreasonable things. Summoning monsters to your opponent's field in Yu-Gi-Oh! Never usually ends well. I'm looking at you, Ibly. Another card is Archfiend Calamity. I don't think the deck is very good or as an engine or WinCon in Centurion, or even the deck it's actually designed for. What's that deck called again? The British guy. Is he Australian? I don't know, man. I don't watch One Piece. I do, actually. It's very peak right now. Yeah, so it's a really unfair card, and I don't think it's fun, even though it's not very popular. Running into it is terrible, and I think, you know, it was very, very based in Masado to see this thing get banned, so it would be nice to see this happen into TCG as well. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Follow me on all my various forms of social media, especially twitch.tv/Farfa, where I stream almost daily throughout the week, starting at 2 p.m. UK. And until next time, adios!